Hello and welcome. My name is Hugo Currie and I'm a Year 12 high school student at the Riverina Anglican College in Wagga Wagga, Australia. This is a series of brief interviews with some of the most amazing physicists from around the world. I'm passionate about physics and will pursue a career in physics and engineering, so I'm honoured to be able to ask a few questions of some inspirational physicists. I really want to thank them all for generously taking the time to chat and, importantly, passing on their rich insights. Hopefully other students with an aptitude for physics can take inspiration and guidance from experience and insights to shape the next generation of physicists. Today I'm speaking to Professor Dale Bailey. Professor Bailey is a Professor of Medical Physics at the University of Sydney, Principal Medical Physicist at Royal North Shore Hospital, and Director of the Sydney Vital Translational Cancer Research Centre. Professor Bailey is internationally renowned for his work in hybrid imaging technology, quantitative SPECT, and theranostics. Thanks, Dale, for taking the time to share your thoughts and experiences.
Looking forward to it, Hugo.
So, firstly, I'm interested to know what drew you to a career in physics, and what excites you about physics, I guess.
So I knew from a very early age I would probably be on a science path. I actually was fortunate to have a friend at high school who was 1 year older than me who had very similar interests. We had interest in electronics and building things, and we both felt we would end up in science. And for that reason, we both chose to study the social sciences at high school up to the HSC. So I did from years 7 to 10, I did things like music and French and history, and I didn't really follow science very much, knowing that I'd pick it up in years 11 and 12. So I had a long-term plan, I guess, that I would end up in science. At the end of school, I wanted to have what is now called a gap year, although they didn't really exist back then. And I saw a job advertised in the local newspaper, the St George Leader, for a job as a nuclear medicine trainee technologist at St George Hospital, which was near where I was living. I was in Peakhurst, that was in Cogra. And I went for the job and I was fortunate to get it. Now, I only intended to stay for a year, but I really enjoyed the field. It was pretty primitive back then, I guess. We're talking about the late 70s. But I really enjoyed it and the clinical work. And about halfway through, I decided to do this whole 3-year course, which was all part-time at nights at the time, and work through the day. About halfway through that 3 years, I was approached by the head of the department who asked me, why don't you go and do medicine and come back and do nuclear medicine as a specialty? And I said to him, no, sorry, I've already decided I want to be a physicist. I like what your physicist does more. And so I'd made up my mind by then. So at the end of that 3 years, I got my certificate, and I then went full-time to study physics. And what I like about it is that physics, in medical physics, is where you can bring mathematical and physics knowledge and apply it in the application of human health and disease. So it's a really nice mix of the two.
Yeah, I certainly think it's a really grounded application of physics, I guess. I've talked to a couple of people that are, physics with astrophysics and that sort of thing, but in medical physics, it seems to me that you can really see what the physics is doing and make a real difference, I guess.
Yes, I agree. And look, our physics applications in medicine span a very wide range of things. I have friends, especially in Europe, who are very much theoretical, very mathematical physicists working on new image reconstruction approaches, but really at a very fundamental mathematical level. And then I consider myself more of an experimental physicist, and working in that area. But of course, physics extends to things like materials and the health these days with particles and fluids and into electronics type things. Many of my colleagues around the country have their own interest areas, where it might be in maybe Monte Carlo simulation, or it might be in IT systems or artificial intelligence or my area is sort of in vivo quantification. So that is trying to work out the accuracy, improve the accuracy of the estimation of the radioactivity concentration inside the body from external remote sensing.
Yeah. So yeah, talking about, so there's obviously a really wide range of applications of that. I'm interested to know though what you think, what you see on the horizon that could inspire the next generation of physicists, I guess.
In my particular niche area, I think everybody would tell you, firstly, therapy is a really emergent area. And I believe we don't understand very much about the biology of this at the moment, the radiobiology field. I've done courses in radiobiology, and I can tell you it's all based on external linear accelerators used in radiation oncology, where they fire very high energy X-rays at the patient, rotate the gun around the patient and focus on a certain point to try and deliver that dose. And so everything I know about, anything I've been taught about the radiobiology is all about this really kind of catastrophic cell disruption caused by very intense radiation. Now, our radiation is injected into the patient. It's pharmaceutically directed to the target, and that's where we hope it sticks. And as it decays, giving off the particles, either the beta particles or the alpha particles. Now, that's a very different scenario to firing high energy X-rays with intense beams. And so we don't understand the biology of this. So everything we know is based on this radiation oncology scenario, but little is known about how slow drip, drip, drip radiation hitting the target has an impact. And so there's much to learn in that area. And it really goes back to the lab. We're doing a lot of cell-based irradiations here at the hospital and the university to try and understand this better. But when you look at the literature, it's kind of died out in around the mid-80s and early 90s. And there just hasn't been much work done. But now intense interest again because of developments in molecular biology and molecular targeting. And so we're starting to have to re-understand and dig back into this a lot more. So that's one area that's emerging. And that again comes with experimental components, simulation components, biological components. How do you assess change? The other area that I know many people are very interested in is what's the power of things like deep learning and artificial intelligence applied to the signatures and the signals we get in our images, so that the images have much more to reveal than perhaps the naked eye can see, even for the specialist. And I've just read an interesting paper in the past week that now the shape and features that are extracted from PET scans using the radio-labeled glucose, FDG, fluorodeoxyglucose, in lung cancers can actually predict whether they will respond to the new type of treatment, immunotherapy or not. So at the moment, we have to stick a big needle and do what we call a core biopsy into that tumor to then send it to the pathologist for him to do his stains and tell us whether there's any potential to use immunotherapy in these patients. This paper that's come out from a very, very reputable group in the US, very large numbers of patients, is showing that you can do that on the characteristics seen on the PET FDG and CT scan. So that's a really, really interesting development. It's not something I'm drawn to personally, but I know many of my colleagues are.
Yeah, no, that does sound very interesting. I think the common trend over all the disciplines of physics is that artificial intelligence is making a big name for itself, or will be at least.
Yeah, I've even heard it being used in detectors to sort of try and improve the spatial resolution of where we localize the event to. So that's really being burned into a chip, an ASIC at a front end detector in the electronics. So it's got very, very wide ranging applications.
Yeah. So I'm interested to know what skills you've relied on most throughout your career.
This is a really important point. I think the most important skill that I've had Forgetting aside creativity and innovation, those are kind of less tangible things. But the ability to write software code, I won't take on a student who won't do programming, because programming allows me to translate what's in here into something that I can test. We don't tend to have budgets and grants to build new scanners and detectors and develop all that sort of technology, but I can take an idea and with software turn it into a prototype, an experiment. I can test things, I can improve things. And so I see that as absolutely fundamental. And many medical physicists resist learning how to program. And to my mind, all they can do then is just press buttons and do things that the manufacturer or the writer of other software packages lets you do. Whereas we've been innovative, we can turn our ideas into actual actions using software. So I'm very, very supportive and assertive about that. The other thing, and it's related to that, is that software programming makes you think in a top-down sort of way, in a logical step-by-step way. So it really, I mean, the software does exactly what you tell it to. If you tell it to do something stupid, it'll do something stupid, right? So that's a really good thing about learning to code. There are lots of very accessible coding platforms these days, which are absolutely suitable for us. I'm not a professional by any means, but sort of the so-called fourth generation languages, things that you might have heard of like MATLAB or IDL, the scripting languages like Python. These are all incredibly powerful these days, and probably all we need to do so that I don't have to be a C# or a Java programmer, but I can develop that code. And so I think while you might look at papers I've published or textbooks that we've done or something like that as big achievements, I actually think my biggest achievement is something that nobody ever sees, and that's the software code that I wrote to support development in our environment, so that everybody, like someone like yourself, would come in and within a day be writing meaningful code because the software environment has been written that supports that. So you don't need to worry about the I/O and things like that, for example. So nobody ever sees that, of course, but I've got many people who've got their PhDs and master's theses and undergraduate theses based on that large body of work.
Yeah, I definitely think I consider programming to be another form of communication, where it's like it is a universal language, because especially at the more fundamental levels of programming, such as machine code or the purer things, it's such a universal language that it can be used to communicate ideas to a range of different people, which I guess is important.
I think people see scientists and people like myself often as problem solvers, and that's true. And people ask me, what did I learn in my physics degree? And I said, well, I didn't learn much about the meaning of life or the universe or anything like that. Although you think that maybe comes into physics a little bit, but I actually learned to problem solve. That's what it was all about, really. And sure, there were some technical sort of things as well that go with that, but it's mostly about problem solving. And doing a first degree in something like physics is a very, very good platform for developing yourself further and as a problem solver. Now, having said that, I'm not a 100% of my time problem solver. I believe there's a part of my career and role that is about creativity. And that's not what people think often as a physics or mathematician. I don't think creativity is a word many people associate with it, but you might think that more about the artists in our society. But in fact, artists have problem solvers as well. They've got a scene or whatever they're trying to depict, a thought, and the problem is how to resolve that and how to get that down on a canvas or into a frame of a photo or something. So there's a bit of both in all the spectrum from the very liberal arts through to the hard sciences. Creativity remains part of that.
Yeah. So you've had such an amazing career, and you kind of said it before. So would you consider the software that you've written to be the highlight of your career, or would it be something else?
Oh, and I think it is, because it's enabled so much work to be done. You know, my colleague today, she did her PhD with me in using this software. I've got multiple PhDs at the moment, all using this. Most of my papers and things will have some component that's used that approach, and so I feel it's really important.
Yeah, nice. So what do you see as the biggest influence of physics on society?
I think it's about truth. It's about evidence and reality. It's about explaining things. So if we are to understand ourselves better, then we should understand our environment and our universe around us better. And so that's what physics is attempting to do. And along the way, as you learn these things, you can start to repackage them and then use them for the better of society. So whether we're talking about electric vehicles or, you know, something else to do with our environment, a lot of it would come back to early developments in physics. Non-invasive imaging, for example, starting with Wilhelm Röntgen, with the X-rays in the end of the 1800s, through the development of the tracer techniques that we use, now to very, very sophisticated levels, of course, but with still a long way to go and lots of developments there still to come. So I think it's about understanding ourselves better and then seeing how we can use that understanding to improve the world we live in, including that for the humans as well.
Yeah, nice. So is there anything within the field of physics, specifically medical physics, that's important or contentious that you would like to see the next generation of physicists work on?
Not sure about contentious. Maybe this is a very subtle point, but I think the pace of change is so rapid at the moment, and advancements, say in nanomedicine, that the conventional ways in medicine that we would test whether this is a useful intervention or not are probably outmoded. So we need more creative thinking about how do we test something. Your father would be very aware of this with the long delays there are in approving a new diagnostic imaging test until we generate sufficient evidence. And, you know, that means looking at survivals and how long people are free from the recurrence of disease and things like that. And they tend to take years. So maybe I think the contentious thing there is I would be advocating for earlier analyses, earlier markers that inform us as to whether we should be adopting this and supporting it through our health systems. Yeah,
that's certainly important, I guess, because is it right that that has a big effect on people, not just physics?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it has an effect on society. I mean, I would advocate a system, for example, where we, if we thought something looked good and there was some evidence from overseas that this worked better than the current investigation we have, I would advocate a system where the government entered into an arrangement with the organisation and said, right, if you do these scans, we'll pay you a certain amount, which covers your fee, and then let's generate the evidence rapidly and have a look at it. Whereas at the moment, we have to scratch around and write grants and try and do fundraising to generate that evidence, and then take it to the government and say, look, you know, it's better, and they sit back and judge whether they think it's better or not. I mean, I'd rather do that in a cooperative, collaborative way than what we do at the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. So final question, do you have any final pearls or pitfalls to offer high school students that have an aptitude for physics?
Yes, pursue it. And don't think that it's going to lead into an esoteric dead end, because it's not the first degree is not what you end up really doing. It's not a vocational degree. It's about learning how to think, learning how to problem solve, organising yourself. There's a big step from high school to university often. It depends on the university, but somewhere like the University of Sydney with 60,000 students, you can get lost pretty easily. And so there's a lot of self-discipline that's needed in that. but the first degree is really a platform to build on. And I think I've known many, especially in the US, who have done a physics degree followed by medicine. And I think that's been a wonderful sort of career path for them, because they have an appreciation of experimental methods, of theory, and then they go into practicing medicine as well. So yeah, don't be put off by it. And look, I do some careers advice nights for high schools and things, and I often get the students come to me and say, oh, I love maths and physics, but I just don't know what I can do with it. Well, there's lots of really, really good things you can do with it, but it's a starting point.
Yeah. Well, thank you for such an amazing insight into the world of medical physics. I really appreciate you taking the time to inspire the next generation of physicists. I'm sure that those that listen will share my appreciation.
Good on you. Thanks, Hugo, and good luck.
All good.